On March 18, 2021, police found a body on a bench in Tlaquepaque with a sign reading "Traitor" pinned to the chest. What led to that moment was some of the most brutal torture and murder in Mexican cartel history. Here are the most disturbing final 24 hours of cartel torture victims.
Kiki was more than just an agent. He was a husband, a father, a son, a man who dedicated his life to stopping the flow of deadly drugs into our communities.
Enrique Kiki Camarena was a DEA agent stationed in Guadalajara, Mexico. In 1985, Camarena was investigating the Guadalajara cartel's massive marijuana operations, a bold move that would ultimately cost him his life. His commitment to exposing the cartel's operations led him straight into the crosshairs of Mexico's most dangerous crime syndicate. Camarena was last seen alive on February 7, 1985. As he left the U.S. consulate for lunch, cartel operatives, assisted by corrupt Mexican officials, abducted him in broad daylight. He was taken to 881 Lope de Vega, a Guadalajara house that doubled as a torture chamber for the cartel's enemies. Eyewitness testimonies detail how Camarena was greeted by Rafael Caro Quintero, one of Mexico's most notorious drug traffickers. The infamous greeting,
"I told you I was gonna have you in my hands, you son of a bitch,"
marked the beginning of 30 hours of unimaginable torture. In that small bedroom, Camarena endured savage beatings. His captors burned him with cigarettes, ruptured his skull with a tire iron, broke multiple ribs, and crushed his cheekbones, all while keeping him conscious to extract information. Medical evidence later confirmed his tormentors repeatedly revived him with injections, just so the torture could continue. High-ranking Mexican officials, including cabinet members and the Jalisco governor, gathered in the living room, fully aware of what was happening. The house became a gruesome gathering point for powerful politicians, corrupt cops, and cartel leaders, all united by their desire to silence the American agent. Camarena's torture was meticulously recorded on audio tapes, later used as evidence. He was interrogated about DEA operations, informants, and ongoing investigations. The tapes, never released to the public, are said to include harrowing moments of his suffering and a possible CIA officer's participation in the interrogation. After more than 30 hours, Camarena's body finally gave out. But even in death, he wasn't granted peace. His body, along with that of Alfredo Zavala, his pilot, was first buried near Guadalajara, then later moved to another location. Both men showed signs of severe torture and brutal violence. Camarena's murder shocked the world and became a turning point in the drug war. The U.S. launched Operation Leyenda, the largest DEA homicide investigation ever. At least 22 people, cartel leaders and corrupt officials, were indicted, though true justice would take decades. The aftermath of Camarena's death triggered an aggressive crackdown on the Guadalajara cartel. The organization fractured, giving rise to the modern-day Sinaloa cartel. Camarena's sacrifice inspired Red Ribbon Week, a nationwide anti-drug movement that continues to this day.
Today we honor Kiki's legacy and stand as a testament to the resolve of all the men and women of the DEA, past and present.
Decades later, the capture of his killers brought some measure of closure, but the brutality of his torture and murder continues to shock the world. But Camarena's ordeal isn't the most shocking on the list. In the next case, we see a teenage vlogger who died too soon at the hands of the CJNG.
17-year-old Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales was shot 18 times in a bar after posting a video of him talking badly about one of the most dangerous drug lords in Mexico.
December 18, 2017. A teenager's reckless online bravado would cost him everything. His final hours played out in a Guadalajara bar, ending with 18 gunshots and a cautionary tale for an entire generation. Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales grew up in the shadow of Sinaloa's infamous cartel culture. Abandoned by his parents and raised by his grandmother, he found comfort in the bottle and fame through his alter ego, El Pirata de Culiacán. By 17, he was a viral sensation, social media's favorite wild child, known for drinking stunts and brash humor. His videos captured a dangerous blend of youthful arrogance and the region's narco-cultura, glorifying cartel lifestyles through fashion, music, and attitude. El Pirata embraced this fully, posting clips of himself chugging alcohol, flashing weapons, and living the narco fantasy. His followers grew into the millions, turning him into a modern folk figure. But his online persona was more than just entertainment. It was a survival tactic in a world where poverty and violence were everyday realities. Each video pushed boundaries further, building an audience addicted to his reckless antics. Sponsors and regional musicians noticed, inviting him to parties and music videos, feeding his fame while ignoring the underlying dangers. Late one night, fueled by alcohol and false confidence, El Pirata crossed a line no one in Mexico dared approach. He aimed his phone at the camera and delivered a vulgar insult directed at Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the most feared cartel boss in the country. The specific phrase he used was a death sentence in itself. In his drunken state, he declared that a phrase that instantly sealed his fate. Social media immediately exploded, with many warning that he'd signed his death warrant by publicly disrespecting the CJNG leader. Despite the growing concern, El Pirata seemed unfazed. He continued posting videos, partying, and inviting followers to meet him in Guadalajara, the very heart of El Mencho's territory. His bravado was as bold as it was suicidal. December 18, 2017. That night, 4 armed men entered the bar where El Pirata was partying. They walked directly to his table, drew their weapons, and opened fire. He was hit by 18 bullets, dying instantly. A 25-year-old bar employee was also killed. The message was clear and brutal. This was no random act of violence. It was a calculated execution, a warning to anyone who might consider disrespecting the cartel. Within hours, news of his death spread across social media. His fans shared condolences, shock, and regret. Even those unfamiliar with his work recognized the tragic irony. His quest for viral fame had ended in the most public way possible. Authorities quickly connected the murder to his video insult. But as with most cartel killings, justice was out of reach. No arrests were made, and the case quietly disappeared. Another statistic in Mexico's escalating violence. El Pirata's death became an instant cautionary tale. Memes, news reports, and social media posts dissected his final moments, turning his story into a modern myth about the dangers of internet fame in cartel territory. His grave became a pilgrimage site, often decorated with bottles of alcohol, the very substance that fueled his rise and fall. Followers left tributes, while others debated whether his fame was worth the price he paid. El Pirata's death marked a turning point, showing that the rules of the internet don't apply in cartel territory, but it doesn't come close to the brutality and agony in this next case. August 11, 2022. Lagos de Moreno, Jalisco. 5 young men, Roberto Olmeda, Diego Lara, Uriel Galvan, Jaime Martinez Alarcón, and Dante Cedillo, stepped out into the night, never knowing it would be their last. Their story would have become one of the most disturbing examples of cartel brutality ever recorded. These weren't hardened criminals or rival gang members. They were friends, students, men ages 19 to 22, drawn together by an innocent desire for extra income and a better future. Their families described them as responsible, hardworking, and hopeful about their lives ahead. But that hope would soon be shattered. The nightmare began with a simple job offer. Too good to be true. The friends responded to a call center advertisement promising high-paying private security work. In reality, the operation was a front for the Jalisco Nueva Generación Cartel, CJNG, designed to lure young men for forced recruitment. What they thought was a legitimate opportunity quickly turned into a deadly trap. The friends were directed to meet a contact in town. They disappeared that night. Their families reported them missing immediately. But in a place like Lagos de Moreno, where over 400 people have disappeared since 2009, Authorities moved slowly.
Que apunten a una línea de investigación y eso ha inconformado a toda la población.
Days passed with no sign of the missing men. As hope faded, the truth emerged in the most horrific way possible. A video surfaced online showing the 5 friends bound and kneeling before armed cartel members. The footage was marked Pure MZ, referencing El Mayo Zambada, leader of a Sinaloa cartel faction. But the true perpetrators were later confirmed to be CJNG. The video showed one of the friends under extreme duress, forced to bludgeon and decapitate another. It was a brutal display, designed not just to kill, but to break spirits and send a message. This wasn't just about murder, it was psychological warfare. The video circulated rapidly and echoed the Zetas' infamous 2010 brutality, where kidnapped victims were forced to kill each other with sledgehammers. But this case felt even more personal. 5 friends, united in death as they were in life.
Llorando porque me pueden, esos muchachos me pueden, las muchachas me pueden, todos los jóvenes, que la sociedad no se da cuenta que ya es de todo y por todo, o sea.
The families recognized their sons immediately, despite the duct tape and the terror in their eyes. The pain was overwhelming, but their ordeal wasn't over. Authorities discovered 4 burned, decapitated bodies in a ranch building near the abduction site. A 5th body was found in a burned-out car nearby. Investigators found bloodstains on the floor and scattered shoes at the crime scene. The violence was so extreme that identification required DNA testing. The cartel's message was clear: cooperate or face unimaginable consequences.
Hay muchos desaparecidos y desaparecidas. O sea, el problema es grave aquí en Lagos de Moreno.
The aftermath was devastating. The video shocked the nation, sparking rare outrage in a country numb to violence. Lagos de Moreno became a symbol of Mexico's 111,000 missing people. The case highlighted the growing crisis of forced cartel recruitment and the brutal methods used to control territories. President López Obrador called the killings very regrettable, but offered little else. The federal government took over the investigation, acknowledging the cartel's involvement. But in Lagos de Moreno, trust in authorities had already collapsed. The psychological impact was profound. Community life changed overnight. The local priest described a fear that has paralyzed the population. People stopped socializing. Young men stayed home, afraid of becoming the next victims. The sense of safety was gone forever. A truly tragic story, but not as heart-shattering as the next case, where a beloved singer received an actual death note from a cartel hours before his death. May 16, 1992. The Bugambilias Club in Culiacán buzzed with energy as Chalino Sanchez took the stage, never imagining the next 24 hours would become legend. As the crowd cheered his name, a small piece of paper changed everything. What happened after would cement his place in Mexican music history and become one of the most haunting final days in the world of narco-corridos. Chalino Sanchez was born Rosalino Sanchez Felix in 1960 in the small Sinaloan town of El Guayabo. The youngest of 8 children, he grew up surrounded by violence and poverty. By age 15, that violence changed him forever. He shot and killed a man who had raped his sister. Forced to flee, he crossed to the United States and started a new life. In Los Angeles, he worked odd jobs, washing dishes, selling cars, and sometimes other things. But a tragic loss in 1984 changed his trajectory. His brother Armando was found shot dead in Tijuana. That pain fueled his first corrido, a raw, honest ballad that started a revolution in Mexican music. Chalino's voice wasn't polished, he called it barking. But his lyrics spoke brutal truth. Stories of the underworld, ordinary people caught in extraordinary violence, and the harsh realities of life on both sides of the border. He sold cassettes from the trunk of his car, building an underground following that grew with every song. By the late 1980s, Chalino became a voice for the voiceless. Every performance felt dangerous. He often carried a pistol on stage, knowing his songs made powerful enemies. But his music connected deeply with those living through the same struggles he sang about. January 25, 1992. Chalino played the Plaza Los Arcos nightclub in Coachella, California. That night, a man named Eduardo Gallegos demanded a specific song. Chalino refused. Shots rang out. Chalino returned fire. One bystander died, and several were wounded. Both men survived, but the shooting only increased Chalino's legend and his enemies. But success brought danger. His team warned him not to return to Sinaloa. Too many powerful people felt threatened by his songs. But Chalino ignored the warnings. He returned home, proud to show the people he'd made it. May 15, 1992, Chalino performed at the Salon Bugambilias in Culiacan. During the show, someone handed him a note. Witnesses said his face changed as he read it. He wiped sweat from his brow, crumpled the note, and continued singing. That moment became known as the Death Note. Its contents remain a mystery, but what followed was all too real. After midnight, Chalino left the club with his brothers and friends. Their car was stopped by men in black Suburbans, flashing state police credentials. They said their commander wanted to see him. Chalino agreed to go with them, either out of bravery or resignation. The next morning, two farmers found his body near an irrigation canal. He was blindfolded, wrists bearing rope marks, clear signs of torture. 2 bullets to the back of the head ended the life of the King of Corrido at just 31 years old. Chalino's death shocked Mexico and the United States. His funeral drew thousands, but his legend only grew. Over 150 corridos would be written about him. His music became a soundtrack for a generation living through the realities he sang about. His murder remains unsolved. Some say it was cartel revenge, others believe it was a powerful message to anyone who dared speak truth through music. But one thing is certain, the Death Note became more than just a warning. It became the final chapter in a story that still echoes through Mexican culture today. But if you think Chalino's story is haunting, the next case goes even deeper into the brutal realities of cartel violence. What happens when 2 men ask too much from the Sinaloa cartel? December 2011. 2 men sit shirtless against a dirt embankment, hands tied behind their backs. Their faces, one older, one younger, show resignation. It's a silent warning to anyone thinking of crossing the Sinaloa cartel. Felix Gomez Garcia and his uncle, Barnabas Games Castro, were typical lower-level cartel workers. Poverty and desperation pushed them into the drug trade. They worked as errand boys, running small packages, barely making ends meet. Their last job paid just $21. But greed, or perhaps simple survival, led them to steal from the wrong people. The days leading up to their capture were tense but unremarkable. They knew they were in trouble, aware of what happens to traders. The cartel's reach was everywhere. There was nowhere to hide. Their families tried to intervene, but the system that feeds on fear and violence was already in motion. Think next time you decide to give the finger. Think about it very carefully, because it's not easy being here, and you can never go back. With these people, you don't play around. Those were Felix's last recorded words, forced confession under cartel orders, delivered as a warning to others. Their final 24 hours were spent in a makeshift holding cell. They were fed, given water, treated almost humanely, but with an underlying message. This is what happens to traders. The psychological torture was relentless. They were forced to watch execution videos, reminded constantly of what was coming. Their last moments were filmed in a carefully staged setting. The dirt wall was chosen for maximum psychological impact. The camera focused on their faces, capturing every flicker of fear and resignation. The older man, Barnabas, looked at his nephew with a mix of regret and acceptance. Felix stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, trying to maintain some dignity. Barnabas explained how he got involved through Felix. They both expressed deep regret, not just for stealing from the cartel, but for ever getting involved. Their voices were steady, but the fear was obvious. The execution was designed to send a message. The method was brutal but quick, a chainsaw, used with merciless efficiency. Felix was forced to watch his uncle die, the blood splattering onto his own body. That was the last thing he saw before his own execution. Felix's death was even more gruesome. The killers used a machete, making it slow and painful. When it was over, they placed his head on his torso, a final warning to anyone thinking of betraying the cartel. The video of their execution went viral, spreading fear and reinforcing the cartel's power. But it also exposed the brutal reality of cartel life. These were not powerful criminals. They were desperate men caught in a ruthless system. Their deaths became a warning, a propaganda tool showing what happens to traitors.
The message was clear. You can join the cartel, but you can never leave. The penalty for betrayal is always death.
Their final 24 hours were spent knowing exactly what was coming. The cartel wanted them to suffer, both physically and psychologically. Every moment was calculated, every action designed to maximize fear and obedience. If their story seems extreme, wait until you see what happens when a high-ranking cartel boss betrays the CJNG.
Por medio de redes sociales, circula un video, donde aparece un hombre que se identifica como el Cholo, acompañado de 6 sujetos armados con el rostro cubierto.
March 18th, 2021. The world watched as Carlos Enrique Sanchez Martinez, known as El Cholo, sat surrounded by masked gunmen. This chilling footage marked the beginning of his final 24 hours, a harrowing descent into cartel brutality that would shock even those hardened by years of violence. El Cholo wasn't just another cartel figure. He was the founder of the Nueva Plaza cartel, a former confidant turned bitter enemy of El Mencho and the CJNG. His defection triggered a brutal turf war, leaving a trail of bodies across Jalisco and beyond. For years, El Cholo built his own criminal empire while evading the CJNG's relentless pursuit. But on that fateful day, his luck ran out. The video that surfaced was more than a forced confession. It was a public execution.
Mi nombre es Carlos Enrique Sánchez Martínez, alias El Cholo, originario de Guadalajara, Jalisco. Me encontré en esta situación por ser contra del CJNG. Me encontré en el Distrito Federal con Omar García Harfuch.
Even as he stated his name and origins, the tension was palpable. The armed men behind him weren't just for show. They were there to ensure every word served the CJNG's propaganda machine. That simple admission, being against the CJNG, sealed his fate. What followed was a series of shocking confessions, each more damning than the last. El Cholo didn't hold back, naming high-ranking officials allegedly complicit in cartel violence. His words were calculated to inflict maximum damage on both enemies and supposed allies. He took responsibility for numerous mass graves, detailing how he manipulated law enforcement for publicity. Each confession was a nail in his own coffin, but also a bombshell revelation about cartel operations. The admission of a grenade attack on the American consulate escalated the situation to an international level. It was clear this wasn't just about personal vengeance. It was a message to every rival, every official, every potential traitor. But the video was only the beginning. What happened next would become legend in the darkest corners of cartel lore. After the recording, El Cholo endured hours of unimaginable torture. The autopsy revealed burns from high-voltage clamps, shattered bones in both legs, broken toes, one severed entirely. His eyes were gouged out. His tongue wasn't cut, but pulled from his mouth. 4 deep head wounds marked the final stages of his suffering. The message was clear. Betrayal would be met with the most extreme punishment imaginable. El Mencho's revenge was complete, but the violence wouldn't stop there. El Cholo's body was found on a bench in Tlaquepaque, wrapped in bags, with signs stuck to it with knives. The word traitor pinned to his chest was more than a label. It was a warning to anyone considering defection. His execution triggered a wave of violence across Jalisco. The Nueva Plaza cartel fractured, its territory swallowed by the CJNG. El Mencho's grip tightened. But even as the blood dried, another story was unfolding, one that would push the boundaries of cartel brutality even further. July 2021, Toluca, Mexico, Maria Fernanda Garcia Alvarez was found in the grip of the Los Viagras cartel. Her last 24 hours were a nightmare of fear and cruelty that no one should ever face. Maria Fernanda was an ordinary daughter with hopes and dreams, but in a world where cartels rule with brutal hands, innocence offers no protection. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through her community. Families, friends, and neighbors searched desperately, clinging to the hope she might still be alive. But then, 5 days after she vanished, a horrifying video surfaced online that shattered that hope forever. The video captured her interrogation. Bound and terrified, Maria Fernanda was forced to answer questions that would seal her fate. Her name confirmed, she faced accusations she could barely understand. The cartel accused her of being a spy, sent by a rival named Fernando Mendoza. Though whether this was true or just a cruel pretext, no one knows. Then came the chilling promise from her captor, a warning that she was about to pay a terrible price. What happened next was torture, not quick, brutal, or professional, but agonizingly slow and inexpert. The weapon was a blunt old knife, making every cut more painful and drawn out. Maria Fernanda screamed, desperately pleading for her life. Every moment stretched, her pain deepened as the blade struggled to pierce her skin. The lack of a sharp edge turned her torture into a terrifying ordeal of suffering. The killer's frustration grew. Amateur and unskilled, he switched tactics, using force to drive the blade deeper, stabbing her again and again in a desperate attempt to finish what he started. At one point, Maria Fernanda managed to flick her head to the side and scream as loud as she could, an echo lost to the cold silence around her. Finally, she stopped struggling. The moment hung heavy with horror as the killer turned calmly to the camera and made a peace sign, an obscene gesture that mocked the tragedy just witnessed. This was more than murder. It was a message, a terrifying display of power and terror by the Los Viagras cartel. The community was left devastated, haunted by the brutal death of a girl who never had a chance. Femicide in Mexico has escalated beyond rivalry and turf wars. Women like Maria Fernanda are caught in a nightmare of violence. The old cartel rule, not to go after women and children, does not exist anymore. Mexican cartels have since become more violent than they have ever been, and these chilling stories are evidence. Which of these disturbing cases shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments. Like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more true crime.